What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. So, in today's video, we are going to be talking about the big controversy um, over the opening ceremonies at the Olympics and whether or not it's, you know, offensive to the Last Supper and Christians all around the world. So, let's get to it. If you like this content, please consider, if I can speak, consider subscribing. Man, I can't speak. Consider subscribing and like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And leave in the comments below what you think about the whole controversy. What do you think that I talk about? Whether or not it is you think I have a point, or if I'm wrong or whatever. Like, let me know what you think. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So um, so what happened? What happened? What happened? So opening ceremonies of the 2024 Olympics. It's in France. Um, the whole like premise and idea of the opening ceremonies is wherever the location is for you to basically um, give homage, or one part of it is to give homage to the country or area that is being presented and staged at. And this time it's in France, so a lot, the idea here was that it was, for it to have, French influence and uh, give, different things about that are in line with the French culture and whatnot. Um, and along with different performances from people and whatnot, it has supposed to have a musical perform or an artistic performance as well. And in one part of the opening ceremonies, they had a art performance that was held on a bridge. All right, as a runway for to sort of depict French culture in fashion and stuff like that. So you had people in the fashion industry, models and stuff, going down a runway across the bridge uh, in their different, what they consider fashion, and that's a whole other discussion about what's fashionable and not. Fashion is fashion. Whatever you want to consider fashion, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? So, but nevertheless, um, on this runway, though, there was uh, people on the backside that were made up of drag queens and things like that. Um, uh, Transgenderism, representation, and stuff like that across the backside. That the imagery is being likened to the Lord's Supper, or the Last Supper, that was the painting of the Last Supper by Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci, and so that's the big controversy. And it's got a lot of Christians, not all Christians, but a lot of Christians in an uproar, being offended by this. That this is a very important imagery for the Christian culture. Um, I would argue this is more modern Christian culture, but regardless, and that it was a mockery of that image and that portrayal of that scene you know that they're likening to the Bible and the Last Supper with Jesus and his 12 disciples and all that. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at uh, the images, that the stills and stuff like that, because there's not a whole lot of video out. There's a lot of like stuff around the video. I guess, like, copyright issues and stuff like that. So there's not a whole lot of video that can be seen, but we have, just still images of the event and the what's being talked about. Um, and then we will go over the other argument, the other side of the argument, because that's, one side is that there's about the Last Supper. The other side is about that it's more likened to the Feast of the Gods. which with in Greek mythology. So we're going to go through all of that and kind of I'm going to give my opinion of it, and we can and discuss um, what may what may have been the intention um, uh, in this whole like arts performance. All right, so let me swap over here. All right, so the first image we have here, this is the most one of the most popular images being pushed around the internet, uh, uh, which is basically you see it's like this is a runway that's in front, like right here. Okay, this is the runway, and you've got individuals on the back side. Um, you have a center person who is DJ, okay, um, with holding the heart symbol, okay, with a crown, and then people to her both sides dressed in different fashion style, costumes, clothing, whatever. And I'm assuming for the majority, there's most of them, quite a few of them are drag um, people. Okay, not everybody, but there are. Okay, but the idea that was given by the the main guy behind this whole performance was that this was supposed to be about unity, okay, and um, and inclusivity, for everybody. France is a free country, freedom to uh, to religion, to sexuality, to all those things, genderism, whatever. So he was trying to, and gotta understand, this is a performance by a French person in France, uh, created for these ceremonies. So this was his portrayal, like the way he was representing France culture, but uh, in an artistic way that some, like I said, have likened it to the Last Supper. So if you put the two together, so this is what they're looking at. Although this picture's a little bit broader out, but you have, of course, the Da Vinci Last Supper. Jesus in the center is a centerpiece. Disciples and stuff. Uh, to both his left and right side. This is the idea here, in that this is the same thing, that this person is supposed to be representing Jesus, and then all these people to the side are the representations of disciple like, but it's being mocked. That's the idea. Um, Clearly, the numbers don't add up. Okay, first and foremost, um, there are different likings and numbers, and depending upon the picture that's brought up, say like this one's being shared a lot. This only shows a few people to either side or whatever, and then there's different versions, you know, depending upon the number and depending upon how it's zoomed and cropped. It's been showing, it shows different types of numbers. The main one that's cropped around shows roughly about 12 people back there, which, although there's 13 in the Lord's Supper because of Jesus. Um, and so it's making it give a very strong resemblance because of the way it's being cropped and edited. But when you back up here, let me go back. But then when I come here and I show more and more zoomed out image like this one, why is it not swapping? Hello. All right, give me a second. All right, like this one, okay, you see that there are much more people there. Okay, so I mean, we're talking. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to one side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to this side. So that's 16 people. Um, and that's in that cropped image. But there are actually a lot. There's actually a few more uh, that is not even in this image. So it to manipulate an image for one to in trying to compare it to something, to give that like image to somebody who's on, maybe didn't necessarily watch it, or even if they did, they're not completely remembering it, but like they see that and that's like, oh yeah, it did look exactly like that. Um, this is it's a bit of a it's bit out there, to say, or it's kind of wrong in my opinion to take this and compare it and say it's the same thing, um, when it's now. There's also, because they didn't really even, I mean, they kind of made it look like a table to some degree, although it's just a walkway. It just looks like, if you brought it out, it would just be a continuous table that never, I mean, uh, further than what they were. But no food, no plates. Like, it's just people standing there, whatnot. All right. Um, a lot of people are pointing to the crown here because Jesus is often represented with a crown, or a sunbeam around his head, because the Son of God. There's a lot of things to do with that. Um, and although in the Da Vinci painting he does not have that, but they're depicting this out, that he has that this person has a crown and wearing blue, and in Da Vinci he is wearing a blue cloak, even though he's not completely blue. He's wearing a blue cloak. Um, so there are some resemblances, some slight parallels that could make somebody initially, though, oh wow, they're trying to look like the Last Supper, and maybe for a slight glimpse, you could even argue that they were. And I think there's even been a couple of or at least one or so of the actual performers who not necessarily said it was the Last Supper, but was saying that whether it was or not, like, just even if it was the Last Supper or if it was the Feast of the Gods, you know, he they were considering it like a uh, hypocrisy that was being brought up. Um, um, because there's, a lot of different imagery, a lot of different artistics, like capturings of the Last Supper, um, throughout history, not just Da Vinci's. And so is every one of those, like, are you going to depict, if there's so many different versions, slightly different, with slightly different variations and things like that, and it's been, artistically redone several different ways, even in, outside of painting. And that's what they felt like they were, even if they were to say that, then that's what they were just doing, was just giving an artistic view, um, to it. It wasn't, and there was no like mockery intent necessarily. So, but I want to take this to the next like argument. So here we are, um, with, after the previous one. Okay, after this, you had people running. You had a plate drop down, uh, enclosed, and then it opened up and revealed, this collection of flowers and colors, with a guy painted in blue. Um, the idea of being fruitful, colorful, and everything like that. But this is supposed to be an actual representative of representation. Sorry, of the god Dionysus, um, from the Greek pantheon. So, and there are paintings of the Feast of the Gods, and whatever, that you could argue that this is actually from. Um, and this being the Olympics, Olympia, it's got Greek mythology, you know, kind of entangled in it. That's the whole kind of idea. It comes from Greek mythology. Greek mythology, all about the gods. It is very somewhat sexualized. Um, and then Dionysus, it was the fertility and wine, fertility, fruit, wines, things like that's what he was a god of. So this is the idea here, is that this actually comes from the Feast of the Gods, which, if you and I guess I should apologize immediately, or rather, give a disclosure that this painting does have nudity, okay, or if people want to, so anyway, but this is one image of the Feast of the Gods that was painted. This image, I think, is actually one that is placed, displayed in a museum in France. And as you see, uh, well, and let me give another image real quick. And this is another one, also, fair warning. But now this one's also being shown, and this is the one that's being like shown more about the Feast of the Gods, and a lot of people, or a lot of critics for the Last Supper, are arguing, well, this doesn't look anything like it because there's no centerpiece, and there's people just all around or whatever, but this actually is what was more argued, that what the image actually was around. And as you can see, you have an center imagery here with a sunlight beaming around his head. Okay, now I'm not completely sure on this whether or not which god this is supposed to represent. There were three gods in the Greek mythology that had a lyre as a musical instrument, a lot of times portrayed with them. One being Hermes, the other being Apollo, and the other one Orpheus. So I'm not sure exactly the full history of this particular image and which one this is supposed to represent. But you have this right here very well could be Dionysus. I don't know for sure, but one thing that I even take from this is the fact that he does have a lyre. So it's a musical instrument, right? And he's the centerpiece with the globe. When you go back to the Olympic ceremony, the centerpiece here with the ray crown, like a sunlight or like a crown, and she is being depicted as the DJ, another modern musical instrumentation. So this, which you do not have any sort of in the Last Supper. So there is a very good argument that when you look at this imagery here to here, there is there's a lot of parallels with this as well, and this being where it come from, and it could have even been a mixture of the two images. You could even argue the angels and stuff up above, like this, the light, that these all appear above them, or lights hanging down. Easily be argued that those are angels, or representations of angels, from the heavens. This, or well, I guess in the Greek pantheon, it wouldn't be technically angels, but they're, anyway. But nevertheless, these depictions, very much so. Now, this being like a depiction of Dionysus here, and there's some imagery that I saw. I haven't seen it up in this stuff, but there was some imagery where I saw where he was depicted with this like bluish hue. It's only a couple of them, and some of it's actually more like animated type pictures, where he had like bluish hair and stuff like that. So maybe there was like, they I feel like they were grabbing from a whole lot of different ideas and arts, um, you know, variations, to get this image here of Dionysus. So if it's a mock, and that's another thing. I don't believe. I do understand and can see where, when you look at it from certain perspectives, at certain moments, it looks like maybe there was some type of resemblance to the Last Supper. Okay, um, you could draw that conclusion, but representatives have said that this was more in line and the tension was more in line with the Feast of the Gods, because this is clearly the Olympics. It's based in Greek mythology, and it's just, and the fashion thing was all in France, like uh, culture and whatnot, and that's what they were depicting. Um, so even if at a moment they thought, well, you know, this could potentially be seen, say the people behind it, they said, at one moment they're like, yeah, this may be looked at as the Last Supper, but I mean, even though we're going more for a Feast of the Gods look, and I understand that the Feast of the Gods and the Last Supper themselves have a lot of parallels. Okay, there are quite a few different feasts and suppers that in ancient history and different, you know, historical writings and stuff that that very much parallel each other. Um, the Last Supper is not necessarily unique. Okay, just like the idea of Jesus and Dionysus actually have some very close parallels in their stories. Um, so it's not a stretch, and it's not hard to see that visual when you look at it in certain ways. So, but whether or not, and if you just completely accepted that it was, it was meant to be and intended to be and look like the Last Supper, um, I'm not necessarily seeing um, so much of an issue here. I mean, I can understand where some can be offended by it, but the idea, even so, Jesus welcomed everyone. He didn't have a hatred or a dislike for someone that could be considered, gay, queer, trans, or dragish, or whatever, however you want to, view in the LGBTQ plus community that encompasses, you know, anything outside of the heteronormative, like traditional view. Okay, um, he was open to everybody. So sending hate towards any of these people arguably is not Christian like in itself. Okay. Um, then you have the argument even behind the Last Supper painting by Da Vinci. Um, this painting has not always been accepted even by Christians. There's been moments where even it was considered a mockery. Um, but also Da Vinci himself in his life. There are a lot of arguments around his life and his sexuality, um, whether or not he himself was gay. Although there's very little evidence to him having a actual like significant sexual life anyways. Like he was more celibate, like he was gay, but he was celibate. But he did have a fascination with women as well, paintings and whatnot. So there's it's unclear, what his sexuality really was. Um, but a lot of historians argue that he was most certainly gay. Um, so you could take history and wrap it around in different ways and say, well, because of that, this image of the Last Supper could be considered a mockery. It could be considered, blasphemous or whatever, because it was painted by somebody who you would consider blasphemous or whatever, or unholy or whatever the case. I mean, there's so much to be offended by every single thing or any easily, thing you could. There's so many things that you could argue and paint a reason to be offended or paint a reason for it to be a mockery or blasphemous or whatever. Um, but it doesn't necessarily make that reality. Um, and I just feel like this has been dramatically blown out of proportion. Um, and I don't think it was, I don't really think the intention was nefarious or anything. Um, I easily concede that it very much was supposed to be a representative of Feast of the Gods, around the Olympic, Olympian Greek mythology theme and everything else. Um, but like I said, I see also the other side putting that imagery into it being, you know, a representation of the Last Supper. Um, but the idea of hating on this or whatever doesn't necessarily go, because I mean it's been announced that like the main one here is a Barbara Butch or something like that. Um, uh, has gotten all kinds of hate, uh, messages, calls, and everything from uh, threats of from death to rape to all kinds of stuff from people over this performance. And I mean, how are you going to hate and call something like this a mockery when then you turn around and make hateful, threatening, like uh, just horrible attacks on somebody just because they were in the performance? That to me is just wrong. It's hypocritical. It is anti-Christian. So where what what are we doing here? What are you doing? What is your end goal in this? How are you representing your faith by hating? And that's the other argument. And that's another argument I give to you. This community, this community right here has had so much hate and attacks thrown at them by the very ones who are feeling offended by this for decades. They're constantly hating and attacking and trying to take away their rights, trying to pretend like or make it to illegal or that that they can't exist and everything else. Let's give you the benefit of let's give you the credit that you are completely right and that this was intentionally a mockery. I could argue from that point. that they have the right to mock you because you have for decades hated on them, attacked them, trying to make them not exist just because you don't like them, because you don't want them to exist. You don't want to see them. You don't want them, you know, and you want them to just go away and not be. So even if even if I grant you that this was completely intended to be a mockery, I feel like they had the right. Although I do not in any way think that this was intentional, like offensively intentional. So it's like I find it ironic that this is being argued as a mockery. That's all. Um, and I, and and the fact that this is getting so much traction in over the internet, um, and media and everything else, and this is causing an uproar. But yet you have for months now, 10 months now, a genocide going on in Gaza, and I don't see any kind of uproar or mockery or uh, looking at that as some bad as a bad thing and shouldn't be happening from the group of people that is calling this a mockery. I think there's more important things to be upset about and angry about and making a big deal about than this. And a small section in the open ceremonies of the Olympics. An Olympics, by the way, that is going on while the events in Gaza are going on at the same time. I would be in more of an uproar that the fact that this is even going on after in it while that's going on. The entire Olympics. You've got people starving, dying, and being tortured, raped, and everything else uh, in Gaza by the Israeli IDF, military. Uh, but yet we've got we can continue on with the Olympics. People can go and you know, and I understand that that's all over the world. Everybody's doing their own thing, and going and doing celebrating whatever they're celebrating, whatever. But the fact that that's just it's coming back to the fact that this has been uproar, and those that are actually causing an uproar about Gaza, they're being hated on as well by the group that is calling this a mockery. So they think that this is a mockery and blasphemous and everything else, but yet they're okay with the genocide happening in the world. That's fine. Innocent people, innocent women, innocent children, everything dying, starving, being killed. That's that's supposed to happen. That's God's will. Um, I think priorities are in the wrong place. I think ideas of what is a mockery and what is wrong, morality, is being placed in the wrong places. And there's a lot of hardcore religious people out there that need to reevaluate their priorities and their morality and what's actually important. That's all I'm saying. Um, Anyways, thank you very much. Um, Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe if you like this content, and let me know what you think in the description below. Do you agree with what I'm saying? My opinion on it. Maybe only certain parts. Maybe you disagree with others, or maybe I'm completely wrong. You want to throw hate? Fine, that's cool. I'm okay with that. Um, let's have a conversation, talk about it, grow the community. Let me know what you think of this opening ceremony, and was it offensive? Was it not? I can understand why people are offended, but that doesn't mean that it was intended to be offended. Um, and yeah. So, anyways, thank you, and until next time, it's Clear Talk. Later.